Hey everyone, and welcome to today's class. For today, I do have a few props with me to help just soften a few poses and provide a little bit more support as we hold some longer poses towards the end of class. So for today, I have a set of blocks, a blanket, and a bolster if that's something you need for just a little bit of extra support when we're working a little bit deeper into the hips. So have whatever you need nearby. May not use all of it, may not use any of it. So for today, I'm going to start with a blanket, and I'm going to bring that underneath my sit bones, and we're all going to start in a comfortable seated position. So if you have a little bit more tightness in the hips, you may want something bigger, higher support like a bolster. But if you just want a little bit of something underneath just to bring a little bit of softness, a blanket will do just fine. And just come into an easy seat. Whatever leg is in front is just fine. Whatever comes naturally, let it happen. And just adjust the support as you need. Maybe you want a little bit more height getting started. You can always roll that blanket just an extra bit, find a little bit more lift. And just begin to settle into your shape, into your space. Rooting down through the sit bones, finding length through the belly, heaviness within the shoulders, little lift in the chin. And then go ahead and bring one hand to your belly, one hand to your chest. And slowly just start to find your breath. Not forcing it one way or the other, just seeing how your body is arriving, how your breath is showing up for you today. If it's feeling a little bit more restricted, more shallow, or if you feel like you're able to settle in right away, awesome. Just take note of it, explore it. And if you are arriving with a little bit more tension, giving yourself a little bit more ease as you arrive. We're going to take a few breaths here together, about 10 breaths or so. And as you do so on every inhale, feeling the air fill all the way from the belly, expanding the rib cage all the way through the base of the throat. And on the exhale, reversing, clearing all of that out, ending with the constriction of the belly. To really expel all that stale air that lingers. And just working through that pattern, filling the belly, feeling the rise of your chest into your top hand, all the way through the base of the throat. Maybe taking a pause at the top, and then clearing all the way out from top to bottom. And move at your own pace. Feel free to close the eyes or soften the gaze to help tune in a little bit deeper. And keeping that spine nice and tall throughout. Let's take 5 more breaths here. On your last breath or so, maybe setting an intention. Take a moment of gratitude for showing up onto your mat today. Then go ahead and blink the eyes open. Release your hands down onto your thighs. Just find a point out in front of you. And then go ahead and come Up and over the ankles, remove whatever support you were sitting on to start class. And come onto hands and knees, coming into a tabletop position. Bringing shoulders over wrists, hips over knees. Finding a stable tabletop to start. Gazing down between the thumbs. And on your next inhale, we're going to move through 4 rounds of cat-cow. Inhale, lift the sit bones and tailbone. Allow the belly to fall and really pull the chest and heart forward between the shoulders as your gaze lifts. Exhale, find a little bit of rounding. As you press through the heels of the hands, spread the shoulder blades. Feel that space open up within the back body. And then as you tuck the tailbone underneath you, finishing that exhale, taking the chin in. Inhale, cow pose. Ripple everything forward as the gaze lifts, chest pulls forward as the shoulder blades help encourage that opening. Exhale, round. Opening out through the back body. Inhale, cow. Gaze lifts at the very end. Exhale, cat. One more round, inhale. Moving segment by segment, creating a little bit more space. Gaze lifts, exhale, round. Chin tucks in towards the chest. Maybe a slight engagement of the core, really open up. Then inhale back towards center. Find that stable table once more. Feeling equal weight, left to right, front to back. And then slowly find a little bit more pressure, right hand, left shin. As you slowly reach the right leg back, left arm forward. Stay here for a breath, strong within the belly. Really reaching forward with that left hand, reaching back with that right foot. Exhale, low. Breath to movement, 3 more rounds. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. 2 more, inhale. Exhale, lower, stay strong in the opposite sides. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. 1 breath to find your center. And on your next inhale, shifting your weight into the left hand, right shin, so you can lift that left leg up and back. Right arm comes forward. Feel that reach, that pull to opposite poles to really lengthen all the way through the body, but strong through the belly. 1 breath here. On your exhale, lower. Staying strong and steady. 3 more rounds, breath to movement. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. Inhale, lift. Exhale, lower. 1 more round, inhale. Exhale, lower. Find your stable center. Equal weight, left, right. Pressing through the heels of the hands, find a little bit of extra lift through the shoulders. And then we're going to move through the lower body, through the spine on these next few rounds. So keeping that bend in the right knee. You can tuck the toes actually here in your tabletop position here. And then you're going to inhale, lift the right heel towards the sky. Keeping your belly nice and strong, really engaging that glute as you kick the right foot back behind you. And on the exhale, you're going to drive that right knee in towards your collarbones and towards your chest, rounding through the spine, pressing through the heels of the hands. Inhale, lift the right foot back up and back behind you. Exhale, round. Engage the core, drive that right knee in. Inhale, lift. Just bringing that right thigh parallel to the floor. Exhale, drive. Inhale, lift. Exhale, drive. Feel that connection, holding for 3, for 2, and 1. The right foot goes down to meet the left. Moving on to the other side, reintegrate through the hands, through the shoulders. Inhale, lift that left leg up and back behind you, driving the heel towards the sky, keeping that foot flexed. And again, that left thigh is parallel to the floor, belly is strong. Exhale, drive that left knee in towards the chest. Find that rounding as you press through the heels of the hands, really hiding the heart. Inhale, lift. 3 more rounds. Exhale, drive. Inhale, lift. Exhale, drive. Inhale, lift. Last one, exhale. Feel that connection, feel the core turn on for 3, for 2, and 1. Left knee meets the right. Keep those toes tucked. Press the toes, the heels of the hands, lift those hips up and back, downward facing dog. Feel free to find some movement, pedaling the feet side to side, bumping the hips left to right. Maybe pressing through the hands a little bit stronger to open up through the upper back, whatever you need. About 5 breaths, whether you want to find movement or stillness. Find what works for you. Yeah, 3 more breaths or so. And your next inhale, high up onto the toes. Exhale, soft bends in the knees. And then on your next inhale, you're going to round and ripple the spine forward, coming into high plank. Find your way there. Pause in high plank. And then exhale, bend the knees, send the hips up and back, and face downward facing dog. Feel free to find movement within the spine. If you just want to inhale, pull yourself forward. Exhale, push yourself back. You can find that movement. Again, find some moments of self-exploration. Inhale, high up onto the toes. Exhale, bend the knees. Gaze forward, and then round and ripple forward on that inhale. Finding high plank in whatever capacity. Pausing there for just a moment. And then exhale, send the hips up and back in space. 2 more rounds. With whatever variations of movement feel good. Inhale, high up onto the toes. Exhale, bend the knees, gaze forward. Ripple that energy all the way up. Coming into high plank on that inhale, and pause. Exhale, downward facing dog. 1 more round. Inhale, high up onto the toes. Exhale, bend the knees, gaze forward. Inhale, round and ripple, high plank. Pause. Exhale, send the hips up and back, downward facing dog. Finding a few more rounds of rhythmic movement. Send our energy forward and backward on the mat while incorporating some mobility within the spine, throughout the body. So from here, go ahead and drop the knees. Send the hips back like you're coming into child's pose, but your toes are staying tucked. And from here, go ahead and inhale, pull the body forward, coming into knees, chest, chin. So dropping the chest, dropping the chin, gazing forward. Then go ahead and snake your body forward, coming into either a high cobra or upward facing dog. You can keep your thighs on the mat for now. And then tuck the toes, exhale, downward facing dog. 3 more rounds here. Drop the knees. Send the hips back like you're coming into child's pose. On that exhale, on the inhale, pull yourself forward, knees, chest, chin, pause. Pull the body up and forward, high cobra or upward facing dog. Toes can stay tucked or untucked, whatever feels good. Don't overthink it. And then exhale, downward facing dog. Drop the knees, sit back, child's pose. Pull the body forward, knees stay down, bring the chest down, the chin down, gaze forward. Snake the body forward just a little bit more, come into high cobra, upward facing dog. Exhale, downward facing dog, 1 more round. Drop the knees, send the hips back, child's pose for a pause. Bring the body forward, keeping the knees down. bring the chest down, the chin down, gaze forward. Snake the body to the top of the mat, upward facing dog or high cobra. Exhale, downward facing dog. Find a breath. And then take your time, walk the feet up towards the top of the mat. Coming into a forward fold. Whenever you get there, bring your feet about hips width distance, maybe even a little bit wider. Soft bend in the knees to give yourself the opportunity to lift those hips a little bit higher, and then grab opposite elbows. And then allow the head to hang heavy, finding a subtle traction within the spine, within the neck. And we're going to stay here for about 5 breaths or so feel free to find a gentle sway side to side. Or you can just find a little bit of stillness, allow gravity to do its work. Just hanging nice and heavy, letting the skull reach towards the earth. And just find your breath here. 3 more breaths. Go ahead and release opposite elbows, bring fingertips down to the earth. Go ahead and wiggle. If you brought your feet a little bit wider, go ahead and wiggle them together a little bit more so they're about hips width distance. And then deep bend in the knees, slowly round all the way up towards the Tadasana at the top of your mat. Just a slow, gentle roll. Inhaling the arms up and overhead on the finish, reaching the fingertips nice and tall. You know, side body's nice and long. When you get to the top, go ahead and lace your fingers together. Exhale, bring the palms to the top of the head. Finishing that exhale. And then on the inhale, flip the palms up towards the sky and really press those palms up and away from you. Feel those shoulder blades lift. And on the exhale, side bend over towards the right, bumping the hips over towards the left. Keeping the entire front body facing the top of the mat, trying not to twist. So that side bend could be small, that's okay. Inhale up back towards center. Reach the palms up towards the sky just a little bit more, and then exhale, side bend over towards the left. Slight bump of the hips over towards the right. Inhale back towards center. On that inhale, reach those palms up towards the sky just a little bit taller. And then maybe come on to those toes, lifting the heels up from the sky. Feeling strong within the lower body. Lower belly is lifted to keep your spine, your belly nice and stable. Exhale, slowly lower the heels back down to the earth. Lower those arms down alongside your body. And then on the inhale, send the hips back in space, bend those knees, arms up and overhead, come into chair pose. On the inhale, reach those fingertips up nice and tall. Exhale, sit lower. Inhale, bend the knees. Exhale, sit the hips lower. One more inhale, reach those arms up. Exhale, sink low. Inhale, reach those arms back behind you, staying nice and bent in the lower body. Reaching those fingertips back behind you, drawing the shoulder blades down. And then go ahead and grab hold of opposite hands, lacing those fingers together. Inhale, drive the knuckles away, open the collarbones, roll those shoulders open. And then on the exhale, start to dive that chest forward, straightening the legs towards the direction of straight. Lift those hips up towards the sky and slowly find a forward fold. If finding this grasp is a little bit challenging for you in your shoulders, just find a forward fold. You don't have to find the bind. Just could be a nice way to open up through the shoulders if that capacity, if that range of motion exists for you. And then go ahead, nice and slow, release that hold from one another. Bring those fingertips down towards the floor. And then go ahead and step the left foot back, the right foot back, coming into high plank for a breath. Belly strong, hips extended, chest reaching forward. Driving those heels back in space. Feel a nice strong plank pose here. And on the exhale, sink the hips low. Allow the hips to come down towards the earth. Stay strong within the arms to come into either a high cobra or upward facing dog. Untucking the toes so the tops of the feet are on the earth. Really trying to extend those hips down and towards the mat. Pressing through the heels of the hands to stay lifted through the chest. Gaze out and towards the horizon. And feel free to shift the hips side to side. Really explore that front body opening. Two or three more breaths here. And if you came into upward facing dog, go ahead and drop the knees down towards the earth. Sit the hips back in space. Big toes to touch. Your knees can come a little bit wider. Come into a child's pose. Letting the belly fall heavy, reaching those fingertips towards the top of the earth. If you brought a set of blocks with you today, you can always grab those now. If you'd like to use them, don't have to. I was going to incorporate them into downward facing dog in just a moment, but it would be nice to add them in this moment to find a little bit of chest opening, upper back opening. So if that's something that feels good for you in this moment, go ahead and grab those blocks now, place them underneath the palms of your hands. We're just here for another 2 or 3 breaths. And then from here, go ahead, keep your hands on the blocks, tuck the toes, send the hips up and back in space, downward facing dog. If you have the blocks, just noticing how that maybe changes your shape. Still pressing through the heel of the hand, keeping those biceps wrapped in towards the ears. Still engaged all the way through the shoulder blades. And then from this space, inhale, right leg lifts high and back behind you. On the exhale, soft bend in the left knee as you drive that right knee, right elbow. Pause here, feel that connection happen. And then allow the right foot to come outside the right hand, the right block. And then pause here for a moment. Staying lifted through the upper body, driving back through that left hip. And feel free to shift the weight forward and back. And working our way into the hips here. Maybe opening and closing through the right hip. Just exploring your space, exploring the tension that exists throughout the hips. There's a lot of stuck energy in those spaces. So sometimes, some days we need a little bit more time to explore mobility within these areas. So if you're feeling a little bit more tension within the hips today, you can always drop that back knee. You can get the same amount of work, targeting the same areas if you choose to move into that space. We'll be here for a few minutes to explore our depth. So adjust the blocks as you need. If you are coming down onto your knee, if you have some sensitivity, you can always take the blanket, slide that under the back leg. And just coming back into your breath, using that to help guide what your body is looking for, where it needs a little extra attention. You can stay high up onto the block so you can always adjust to keep the torso a little bit more lifted. And so with this, if I'm a little bit higher, if my torso is lifted, I like to pay extra attention to that back hip. And I like to try to put a little bit of effort into it by pulling that left hip point up and forward to explore a little bit more depth, more stretch, adding a little bit more tension within the muscles crossing in front of that space. With that little lift of the hip point and the low belly, it helps protect your low back in this more upright position. So you can explore that space. Or if you want to bring the blocks a little bit lower, or even remove them depending on your degree of mobility today here in this moment. Maybe you're coming down onto your forearms. Wherever you're moving to in regards to depth, make sure it's somewhere where you're able to maintain. It's okay if things feel a little bit intense, a little bit challenging, but you don't want that tension to travel elsewhere in your body where it's not needed. And again, whatever space you're moving into, you can always keep that back leg lifted, or if you need a break, you can always drop that knee. Move into a space, feel exploratory. And then you can always find movement, find stillness. So if you like that rocking sensation, opening, closing, that right knee, you're shifting forward and back. Sometimes I like to check in with my body every once in a while by finding stillness for a few breaths and finding some soft movements for a few before I settle back in. Wherever you choose to be, whatever feels good. Be there for about 5 more breaths. If you came low onto the elbows, go ahead and prop yourself back up. Find that tall spine. And then send the hips back nice and slow. Come out of that extreme, if you will, with caution, with integrity, with mindfulness as you send the hips back in space, coming into Ardha Hanuman, half splits pose. Right toes can lift up towards the sky, sending the hips back. Right leg can be straight-ish. Keep that chest and heart reaching towards the top of the mat. Then go ahead and shift that weight back into that right foot just to flatten that foot and bring the right knee back to meet the left. And then press the hips up and back, tuck the toes, downward facing dog just to reintegrate, find a moment of symmetry. And then on your next inhale, left leg lifts high up towards the sky. Exhale, soft bend in the right knee as you drive the left knee towards the left elbow. Make that connection before you open that left foot outside the left hand. And we're going to find some similar movements on the left side. So once you get into the shape, keep that right knee lifted to start, just to shift the weight forward and back. Kind of weaseling your hips closer and closer towards the earth. Maybe opening and closing that left knee. Sometimes doing that movement in isolation really brings your hips close to the earth without really much effort in that capacity. You can always bring those, if the knee is lifted and you like to stay lifted, you can always bring those blocks high, coming into a higher lunge overall. And you can still explore your depth in this shape. Just because you're higher away from the ground, it doesn't mean that you're not able to find some depth and create space within your hips, within your pelvis. That's still available. But if you'd like to come lower to the ground, you can lower the blocks. You can drop the knee. You can remove the blocks altogether, or come down onto your forearms. Finding movement, finding stillness, wherever you choose to be, keeping with your breath, using that to your advantage to help soften the areas under tension. I always like to close my eyes when holding longer poses. It gives me the opportunity to keep the focus inward, minimize distractions. I find it a lot easier to settle into my space when I'm not worried about what's happening around me. There's almost too many opportunities for the mind to wander, because anything that you may gaze at, it could be an inanimate object, it could be something around the space around you, something in your room. It can trigger a memory, a thought, something that just doesn't serve you here in this moment. So as simple as it may sound, closing the eyes can be a game changer. Maybe it's not. Maybe that makes you more distracted. Everybody is different, but give it a try. See what happens. And we are in this space for quite a bit of time compared to other poses we started today's class with. So if you'd like to take that opportunity to explore different variations of this shape, give yourself permission to do so. About 5 more breaths wherever you choose to be. Lifted, lowered, active, passive, whatever you like to be. If you move down onto your shins, come up high onto the hands, whether blocks or no blocks. Nice and slow, start to push through the left heel, sending the hips back in space. Again, nice and slow to come out of that right hip. As the hips come back, the left toes lift, soft bend in the left knee. Just kind of working our way out of that depth. A little bit of counter movement. Come back into the left foot, and then bring the left knee back to meet the right. Tuck the toes, hips up and back, downward facing dog. One breath here. On the next inhale, right leg lifts. Exhale, drive that right knee to the right wrist. And then bring the left ankle, the right ankle over to the left wrist. And then coming into pigeon pose. So the way I want to work through it today, if you have the props, it's a good opportunity to use them. And so I want you to try to keep the shin parallel to the top of the mat. And pause here for a moment. Maybe you might need to bring the blocks up a little bit higher for some more support. Feel free to drop the back knee. And if you have all the props that I mentioned in the beginning, or anything nearby, pillows, blankets, anything from your living room space, go ahead and grab whatever you need to keep this shape accessible. So if your shin's parallel to the ground, right now in this moment, my right thigh is pretty high and lifted from the sky. So what I want to do is, if my shin is parallel, I wanted my prop to be parallel with that as well. So almost like your right shin is hugging the blanket, the bolster. And so it feels nice and supported. Depending on your shape, maybe even that left hip point is able to find some subtle contact with that prop here in this moment. So bring whatever you need to make this supportive. And stay upright to start. Again, in this space, in this shape, you can use blocks, you can use blankets, pillows, the softer, the better, usually, unless you don't care about the firmness of the blocks. If that doesn't bother you, to each its own. Excellent. I've done that a time or two before. It's not too bad, but softness usually brings that extra element to your shape, to your space. And take a moment to stay upright. Make sure you feel nice and supported. That left hip point is trying to anchor forward, trying to keep the hips square, albeit quite challenging, but. And then use those blocks to come down over that right shin. So as we did before, you can bring the forearms down to the blocks. If you have a lot of space, you can just come right down onto the mat. We're going to hang out here for 10 breaths. Nice and slow, breathing into that tension within the right hip. And if you found your way into this space and you need more or less support, grab what you need. You have time to get yourself there. And keep working that left hip point down and equal with that right hip, depending on the tightness of that right side. Sometimes our body likes to splay out and open and favor over towards that right. So whatever supports you need to kind of square things off. And 5 more breaths. Walking those left toes back a little bit further if that feels available. And go ahead and walk your hands back up nice and tall. If you have the bolster, you can press your hands through that prop. Release the right leg. Bring the right knee to meet the left and just sit the hips back in space, coming into a child's pose. Bring those blocks back underneath your hands. Hips up and back, downward facing dog for a breath. Finding some symmetry. And then on the inhale, left leg lifts. Exhale, drive. Left knee, left wrist. Open up the hip, rotate that hip out as the left ankle comes towards the right wrist. Keeping that shin parallel best you can. Dropping the back knee. And trying to drive that left knee down towards the mat. Feel that opening. And then from here, slide in whatever props you need here in this moment. Trying to keep that shin parallel towards the top of the mat. And again, with that, keeping that shape, you want to bring whatever support you're using. You're keeping that parallel nature of everything that you're using, the shin, the top of the mat, your bolster, your blanket. So for this side, feeling a little bit more open as I come into it. So I'm gonna grab blanket instead, see how that feels. So coming parallel to the top of the mat. I'm just gonna come back in all piecewise so I don't torque myself into any shape that my body's not ready for. So I'm keeping my shin parallel to the top. That shin is hugging my blanket. So my thighs resting on the towel. Staying high and lifted, walking the right toes back, seeing if I can sink a little bit deeper. keeping that right hip point anchored down, and keeping the torso lifted to start. Once you feel settled, supported, and you're ready to move forward, go ahead and walk the hands down towards the mat, folding over that left shin. So keeping that left hip crease pulling back in space as the right hip point comes forward. That'll help square those hips off to the best of your ability. Maybe a slight lift of the tailbone back behind you as you try to square off those hips, trying to keep the spine nice and long. And being open to the fact that left to right is likely going to be different. I felt super comfortable and supported when I had my bolster on the right side. Probably could have modified with maybe some blankets, but I felt comfortable where I was at. And then on this side, I'm using a pretty low clearance blanket. And I feel just as well here. And so knowing that that could be the same for you. Difference might be a little bit more drastic, might be a little bit closer or more subtle. Especially when it comes to the hips, it can vary quite a bit day to day. Breathing into that tension, those hips, again, closing the eyes. You feel like the outside world might be distracting you away from where you are at this moment. And from here, go ahead and walk your hands back towards the blocks, tuck the back toe to release that left leg. Left knee meets the right, drop the knees, sit the hips back, come into child's pose for just a moment. Maybe knees come nice and wide. Just open up through the hips. And then tuck the toes, downward facing dog. Go ahead and drop the knees. You can go ahead and remove the blocks. And then from your tabletop position, drive that right heel back towards the sky, like we did at the beginning of class. Exhale, drive that right knee in towards the collarbone. Press through the heels of the hands to really round through the spine. And then cross that right leg in front of the left. Keeping those knees, the right knee on top of the left, feet towards the outer edges of the mat, and sitting the hips back in space, coming forward and back, moving into and out of Gomukhasana. So take a few weight shifts forward and back before eventually settling all the way down, hips to heels, or no, hips between the heels. Walking the hands back toward you. Keeping the knees stacked on top of one another best you can. And then, as always, as we have been throughout today's class, if you need a little bit more support, more softness, you can always grab a blanket, pop it underneath your sit bones, give yourself a little bit of a lift. nice tall spine here. You can grab hold of the tops of the feet. You can take arm variation as you'd like. Not here for as long of time, just a few more breaths. And then go ahead from here. We're going to come into fire log. So you're going to bring the left shin parallel to the top of the mat. And then you're going to bring that right shin on top. So now we're going to stack, rather than the knees stacking on top of one another, we're going to stack the shins to the best of your ability. If you want to move into an easy seat at any point, please feel free. But if you'd like to explore some mobility within the hips for these last few moments of class, go ahead and move into this fire log pose. So again, shins are parallel. You might have some space between the right knee, left ankle. So if you have an extra blanket you'd like to pad there, or a block. And just allowing the hands to rest on the right shin. And softening the gaze can always help focus the mind, the breath into the spaces that need it. It can allow your body to release tension elsewhere where it's not needed. From here, go ahead and bring the sole of the right foot in towards the left inner thigh, just to give yourself some space, some comfort when coming up and over into tabletop position, so going over the ankles. And we're gonna go ahead and switch sides. So from tabletop, go ahead, keeping the toes tucked, lift the left heel up towards the sky, left thigh parallel to the earth. Then exhale, drive that left knee in towards the collarbones, press through the heels of the hands to round. Create space for that left leg as it crosses up and over the right knee. Bringing the knees on top of one another, feet come wide towards the opposite edges of the mat, and then find a weight shift to start moving in and out of those hips for a few rounds. Maybe you stay lifted in some capacity during this particular pose, or whenever you're ready, go ahead and allow those sit bones to find their way towards the earth. Make the adjustments you need to keep those knees stacked, the feet wide, and then if you need, you can always slide a blanket underneath your seat. Give yourself a little bit more support. I'm trying to feel the anchoring of the sit bones, the height within the spine as you reach the crown of the head high up towards the sky, shoulders down and away from your ears. And I just like to hold on to the tops of my feet. But you can take whatever arm variation, maybe you take eagle arms. Or if you want to bring the left arm up and overhead, or the right arm back behind you, maybe find a clasp here. If your shoulders feel open enough for that variation, you can always go ahead and explore that space. If you want to grab hold of the spine and fold forward. And that option is always there for you, whether you like to stay tall or you like to find a little bit more depth by folding over your shape. Five more breaths. and bring the weight into your sit bones a little bit more so that those knees almost lift a bit, just to bring your right shin parallel to the top of the mat, then guide the left shin over top of the right. Coming into fire lock. If you'd like, bringing that towel underneath your sit bones. Might help close that gap between left knee, right ankle just a little bit more. And find that tall spine. Let the hips settle. From here, go ahead and slowly bring the sole of the left foot to the right inner thigh. Enough to roll over the ankles, coming into tabletop position. Remove whatever supports you had that you were using, and go ahead and find your way onto your back. Nice and slow, so maybe finding a seat. Then slowly lowering the spine all the way down. Nice and slow. Once the back of the skull meets the mat, go ahead and bring the feet wide, knees to touch. Moment of constructive rest. Feel free to rest your hands on your belly, on your chest. Go ahead and walk your feet parallel to one another, knees come away. Lower body is parallel, arms come alongside your body. And then if it is in your practice, maybe transitioning legs towards the sky. Stretch the legs out, drive the heels up towards the sky. Feel lengthening within the back line of the body. And now I should say, if it's in your practice, go ahead and press through the palms. Reach those legs towards the sky, coming into shoulder stand. Trying to stack the hips on top of shoulders, ankles on top of the hips. And feel free to stay here, or if plow is in your practice, feel free to keep reaching the right toes up and overhead. Maybe they touch the space back behind you. They don't have to. You can always just explore this supine forward fold here. Just keeping that neck nice and steady in the center. Don't turn your head while you're in this space. Really reaching those big toes back and towards the space you can't see, up and overhead. Maybe they find the earth, maybe they don't. Take your time moving into whatever shape you're curious about, but not forcing it. If any of these transitions feel like they're too much for you and your body, can always return back to that space of constructive rest. Whatever fold you moved into, returning to shoulder stand, slowly rolling the spine back onto the earth, keeping those legs lifted, reaching the heels up towards the sky once more, and then slowly lower everything back and down to the earth. You can bend your knees, or if you want one little moment of core challenge, lower the legs straight, keeping the low back down.
Once they lower, go ahead and bring the right knee in towards the chest. Give it a good squeeze, bring that right knee towards the right armpit, reaching the left heel nice and long. Elongate your shape best you can, and then keeping that length, go ahead and bring the right knee over towards the left, finding a gentle twist. Right arm's in a capital T, maybe gaze over towards those fingertips. Feeling that twist through the belly, through the upper back, maybe stretching through the front of the right shoulder. Come back through center. Give that right leg a good hug once more. Go ahead, right foot to the mat. Bring the left foot in. Switch sides. Extend the right leg long. Left knee comes in towards the chest. Grab hold just below the left shin. Give it a good squeeze. Reach that right heel towards the top of the mat. Keeping that length, that depth, go ahead and bring the left knee over towards the right. Left arm, capital T. Gaze can stay up towards the sky, or you can spin your gaze over towards the left if that feels good. Inhale back towards center, one more sweep. Left foot to the earth, right foot meets the left. Go ahead and give yourself a little bit of symmetry. Squeezing both knees in towards the chest. Finding that compression. And then go ahead, nice and slow, let everything go, coming into your Shavasana. Feet find the outer edges of the mat. Arms come nice and wide, maybe even as big into a capital T. Or if you'd like to return to a more introverted or internal space, you can bring your hand back to your belly, back to your chest. Come full circle and return to the breath. Every inhale, you feel your lungs, your belly, your throat filling with some fresh air. And then with every exhale, not only are you expelling stale, unneeded air, you're also sending that freshness all the way through your body. Breathing new life all the way from your toes, up and into your hips, shoulders, all the way to your fingertips. Like every breath is a fresh start. Just feeling all that energy spread from your hips, where we've created space throughout today's class. Allowing all that opening, bringing into your day with a little bit more freedom, a little bit more softness, relaxation. You'll be finding a little bit more energy, more pep in your step as you move through the rest of your day. So if you have the time and you're able to spend 5 to 10 more breaths here in Shavasana, as always, thank you so much for practicing with me, and I look forward to seeing y'all next time. Have an awesome rest of your day.